The Watership Down podcast is intended for listeners who are familiar with the plot. There will be spoilers. This episode is scripted, recorded, edited and narrated by Newell Fisher. Hello, and welcome to the Watership Down podcast episode 156, in which we'll be looking at Season 3, Episode 4 of the TV series, and Episode 30 of the series overall, The Nestling. First, though, a quick note about the terminology I'm using in describing the Watership Down TV series. In the UK, we not only call the overall series of a programme, in other words, all the episodes over the 3 years in this case, a series, we would also refer to the 3 individual sets of episodes as Series 1, Series 2 and Series 3. I made the deliberate decision at the outset to use instead the American convention of calling each year's set of episodes a season. The reason for this was that, frankly, it's a bit clearer than the British convention, and as nearly half of you listening are in the US, I decided to defer to American English in this one regard, because I haven't anywhere else, and I can only apologise if the clarity of my meaning is a bit rubbish as a result. See what I did there? Anyway, enough trash talk. Let's see how the Alil are getting on. TV series Season 3, Episode 4, The Nestling. The 30th episode of the Watership Down TV series was first broadcast in Canada on the 2nd of October 2001. It was written by Mary Crawford and Alan Templeton, and its German title was The Challenge. There will be a link to the episode in the notes. A mother hawk lands on her nest high up in a tree with no food. Her single nestling is clearly hungry. Recognising this, she sets off again hunting. This is the first time, as far as I can remember, that we have ever seen life from the point of view of non-human Alil in the Watership Down storytelling universe. The nestling is so desperate for food that it cries out after its mother as she leaves. Suddenly, it overbalances and, terrified, falls out of the nest towards the ground. It is quite the opening scene. On Watership Down, the comedy Owsler, Dandelion, Strawberry and Hawkbit are talking to Fiver about his prophecy of Woundwort still being alive, which he repeats. Suddenly things have become more serious, and the slapstick winding up of Big may have to become a thing of the past. Hawkbit says that Woundwort surviving while Campion did not is completely unfair. Fiver questions whether Campion is gone. He hasn't had a prophecy, but he just has a feeling. A tickle, he calls it. Dandelion questions whether Fiver is sensing Campion is with them still in the sense of the spirit of LRR being with them, as LRR is called in this series, or in the sense of Campion actually still being alive. Fiver doesn't know. Just as they are contemplating the concept of a ghostly version of Campion being around, they are attacked by the considerably more efficient Junior Owsler, who send them tumbling down the hill. Hawkbit, in true Hawkbit style, questions why Fiver didn't foresee that. A hawk, probably the mother we saw earlier, flies over a desolate, boggy landscape in which we see a tree that almost resembles the former stark tree of Ephrafa. And now we hear Vervaine's voice. He is denigrating himself, saying he is weak, clumsy and a traitor, before he falls into a patch of mud. Ahead of him is Woundwort. Vervaine asks where they are going. Woundwort responds they are looking for a warren for him to rule and shape. As they reach the top of a rocky outcrop that resembles one of Woundwort's former podiums in Ephrafa, he reminds Vervaine that he was in the middle of his confession. Vervaine continues the self-criticism. Then, suddenly, they are attacked by a hawk. It is the mother of the nestling we saw earlier. In silhouette, we see Woundwort fighting the hawk as Vervaine looks on horrified. Returning to his new podium, Woundwort tells Vervaine he should have joined in. It was glorious. Vervaine says perhaps next time. Woundwort laughs. The mother of the nestling we saw earlier is clearly dead. The nestling is looking up into the tree in which it had spent its short life up to that point. Then it decides to try flying from ground level. This doesn't go very well, and it ends up in a stream. Scrambling about, it manages to get to the bank, looking miserable and afraid. On Watership Down, Hannah proposes to Kihar that they fly to the Oaks to look for acorns, but Kihar is looking sad, so Hannah proposes a fish stop en route. Meanwhile, Bigwig is trying to persuade Hazel that the junior Owsler are ready to go out on patrol. Primrose, the mother of at least 2 members of the junior Owsler, listens. Hazel says he is unconvinced they are ready. Bigwig asks if that is his final word. It is. So he orders the attack, and Hazel is knocked to the ground by a 2-pronged assault by the young rabbits. One of the junior Owsler says that Bigwig thought it was the only way to convince him. Primrose suggests not making a habit out of greeting their father in that way. Pipkin begs that they be allowed to patrol on their own. Bigwig suggests some kind of test. Hazel, feeling a bit sore, says he will think of something and leaves with an amused Primrose. Bigwig continues with his more enthusiastic training of the junior Owsler. At least they are keen, unlike the fiasco in the last episode. Pipkin, while in the process of hiding from Bigwig, overhears a conversation between Blackberry and Clover. They have found tracks that Blackberry says are those of Campion. Clover quite abruptly tells Blackberry that they can't be. Campion is gone. Impulsively, Pipkin interrupts them, saying he isn't, then starts to backtrack to the idea that Campion is still with them in spirit. This conversation is interrupted by a Bigwig finding Pipkin. This takes the form of an assault, after which Pipkin is ordered to follow him. Pipkin starts to say, "I wish," to the 2 does, but then leaves, running past Campion's footprint, griping about being ordered around. Campion reaches the podium where Woundwort killed the hawk. He scents his former chief and shouts that he is coming for him. On Watership Down, Captain Broom is holding forth to Pipkin about how hard it was being in the junior Owsler at Redstone. Tentatively, and out of the blue after seeing Blackberry, Pipkin asks him if you always have to keep a promise, even if there's a good reason not to keep it. Broom says promises aren't much good if you don't keep them. Pipkin says he knows a secret that would make Blackberry happy again. Broom says the problem with secrets is that they get knotted up in promises. Bigwig's arrival puts an end to this. Hazel has worked out what the junior Owsler's test will be. As Pipkin and Bigwig depart, Broom looks at Blackberry and comments on the secret to himself, calling it deliciously mysterious. Hazel's challenge for the junior Owsler is to steal 3 stones that will be guarded by the comedy Owsler. Bigwig says this is not fair, to which Hazel responds that life isn't fair, and he learned to be this way from Bigwig. You sense a mischievous attempt at revenge by Hazel for his earlier assault. Later on, Kihar is chasing insects along a stream with Hannah on his back as always. They find the junior Owsler looking for pebbles as part of their plan for the challenge. Suddenly, the Nestling approaches them on foot, its wings spread and screeching desperately. The young rabbits run as it goes up to Kihar, continuing what seems to be begging for help. Kihar says it is a young hawk. When Hannah points out that hawks love mice, and not in a good way, Kihar makes his loud cry, which causes the Nestling to fall back into the water. As it begins to be swept away, Pipkin goes to its aid, helping the Nestling out of the water. Hannah shouts to stay away from this monster, but Pipkin, in true Pipkin style, introduces himself and asks the Nestling what its name is. Its name is Scree, and Kihar says it is a poor little guy who won't harm anyone. He is just hungry and afraid. Meanwhile, the other junior Owsler have found their pebbles, so Pipkin asks Kihar to look after Scree until they get back. Back at the challenge, Pipkin states the names of his fellow junior Owsler as Gilia, Snowdrop and Mallow. Pipkin has, of course, enlisted the help of local wildlife to steal the pebbles. 2 pigeons distract the comedy Owsler, who have been joined by Fiver, while Drumlin the mole digs his way to the guarded pebbles. He reaches them, and they disappear underground. The comedy Owsler look at where they were incredulously. Hazel, waiting outside the warren, tells Bigwig and Primrose that the junior Owsler seem to have failed the test, but they have already arrived with the required pebbles. When the comedy Owsler arrive, Pipkin explains that these pebbles are actually the substitutes, while the actual pebbles were just buried by Drumlin. But he makes sure Hazel confirms they have passed the test first. I guess expecting a mole to deliver the 3 pebbles along a narrow tunnel in time wasn't very realistic, a rare moment of physical realism for an animation with this general degree of removal from the physics of our world. Hawkbit complains that it isn't fair, and is reminded by a smug Pipkin that life isn't fair. which is a bit rich coming from a rabbit that has somehow remained young for the entire series. In any case, the junior owslet is now ready for solo patrols. Back at the stream, Keehar is looking after Scree by feeding him fish. It is hard work, and Hannah asks him if he's sure he wants babies of his own. The junior owsler are on solo patrol nearby, watched from a distance by Bigwig. In the symbolically desolate landscape, Campion continues to track Woundwort. A little way ahead, Woundwort pauses. He has sensed that something is following them. Cowardly Vervain just wants to know if Woundwort can defend them from it, but Woundwort says it isn't a Lil. It is something from the past, something that won't stop until it finds him. Keehar is exhausted. The junior owsler arrive and they discuss what to do. Scree can't look after himself because he can't fly, so they will teach him. Bigwig, seeing Scree from cover, leaps forward to defend the young rabbits, revealing that they were not on solo patrol after all. The junior owsler angrily insists that they are okay, and that they are going to teach Scree to fly, with Keehar's help, obviously. An incredulous Bigwig is outnumbered and gives in. Woundwort and Vervain have crossed a chasm by using a fallen tree as a bridge. Now Vervain has dug out the rock under the tree on the far side, so it is no longer safe as a trap for whatever is following them. Woundwort says if what follows them is not of this world, it can have Vervain. He seems to be serious. Keehar is doing a sterling job modelling aerodynamics for Scree. It is time to find a high place for his first solo flight. Hannah sits nervously on top of Bigwig's head, watching one of her major predators in training. On Watership Down, Hazel is worrying about their young being out on patrol on their own, only naturally. Primrose is reassured by Bigwig being with them, but they leave to check anyway. There are things even Bigwig would not be able to handle. Broom and Blackberry look on. Blackberry sadly comments on how enduring love is. Broom quietly hopes Pipkin eventually tells her his secret. On a small rise, Keehar and Scree prepare to take off, watched by Bigwig, Hannah and the junior owsler. Scree's first flight is a complete success, and the rabbits cheer. Later, as they return to Watership Down, Bigwig suggests teaching a hawk to fly might be something not to boast about to their parents. They meet Hazel and Primrose coming the other way. However, Pipkin doesn't have time to get too angry about this latest unwanted adult supervision. A terrified Hazel spots a hawk heading straight for them, and he and Primrose dive on their kittens and Pipkin. An embarrassed Bigwig says they can get up. Hazel is livid, but Pipkin tries to explain. From above, Scree circles them and cries out, "Friend, Keehar friend, all Long-Ear's friend, always." Then he flies off, crying out his name. Hannah notes that he didn't mention mice. Hazel doesn't believe it. But Bigwig points out that anything is possible on Watership Down. And now it is Keehar's turn. He now knows he would make a good parent. Emotionally, he says goodbye and is gone. Off to the Piegvater again, hopefully to do better than in Season 2. Hannah looks sad, and a little nervous with him gone. As the rabbits and Hannah return to Watership Down, Hazel congratulates Pipkin. Scree is a hawk who may one day help a rabbit they have never even met. Scree is flying over a certain desolate landscape. As he does so, below, Campion is crossing the tree over the cavern, when suddenly it collapses and he tumbles down a collapsing slope, seemingly to his doom. Far off, Woundwort and Vervain hear his cries and laugh, satisfied their pursuer is dealt with. As Campion falls, he is suddenly snatched into the air by Scree, who sets him gently on the ground, safe. Campion looks up at the departing hawk in amazement. Is it canon? There is one small element of this episode that has canonical echoes, bearing in mind that I have chosen to define the core Watership Down canon as the story of the original novel and its first much-loved retelling on film in 1978. The departure of Keehar in the novel is quite casual, as it is here, rather than the dramatic flying into the full moon of the film, and, as here, the immediate action in the novel continues afterwards. Other than that, though, this episode is pure Watership Down TV series. And it does indulge in something very Disney-like that takes us firmly away from the original world of Watership Down. Although Kihara is a carnivore, a gull such as him would not be any threat to rabbits. Scree, on the other hand, is a hawk. He is firmly a Lil. His saying he is a friend of Longears is all very well, but what exactly is he going to eat? Not fish, that's for sure. Will he spare just Hannah out of all the mice he will inevitably have to catch to stay alive? Her attitude to him is understandable. This sentimentalising of predators reminds me of The Lion King, where the future prey of Simba hail their future king. Personally, I prefer Madagascar, the 2005 DreamWorks animation, in which Alex the lion has to come to terms with his innate desire to eat his friend Marty the zebra once his readily available supply of meat is gone. Another aspect of Scree is his alien-like apparent rapid growth. One minute he appears to be smaller than a black-headed gull, as Kihar teaches him how to position his wings, and the next he has lifted the well-built campion off the ground in order to save him. Am I expecting too much of a children's animation? Or can I use the excuse that I am merely analysing where this series lies on the continuum of animation styles proposed by Maureen Furness in 2007, as mentioned in Chapter 11 of Watership Down, Perspectives on and Beyond Animated Violence, which I looked at in episodes 120 and 121. Having made that detailed reference, I will leave the question hanging in the air. Suffice to say, I do try to hold all representations of Watership Down to a high standard, because the way this story is represented matters to me, and if you have found this podcast, probably to you as well. Next time, we return to Redstone Warren. And we aren't the only ones.